Welcome in to the latest episode of the Betting the Pitch MLB edition. I'm your host, _G Warner, on Instagram, Patreon, Twitter, and on YouTube. I'm joined by at ABrooksBets, good friend Andrew, who had a really nice opening day, all recorded on this beautiful podcast we've been putting out there. Plus, I think we had a 2-0 on our opening show for Best Bets. So do you want to, I don't know, clap for yourself and introduce, say hi? Yes, there we go. I also
Round of applause for both of us.
I like the applause. I also like the Rick Pitino all white suit you got going on. I don't know if you're not listening to us on Apple Podcast. I mean, you have a video option everywhere I put it. I think you can watch on YouTube. You can watch on Apple's on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify. You could see A Brooks bets in his maybe he's going to heaven. I'm not sure.
I am in Las Vegas. I'm going to an all-white beach-themed party for work later on tonight. It is the West Coast, so it starts at 8. So I'm already in my, Rick Pitino white jumper.
Nice. I like it. It's pretty nice when you get to go to casino events as part of your job, but that is one of the choices that A Brooks Bets made a long, long time ago when he decided that throwing parties was going to be his livelihood. So we're going to go through, give out best bets, of course, end of show. So you have to stick around for that, or maybe look out for a reel or a short on YouTube, both under the account, the real_G Warner. We're also going to cover the Thursday, April 4th card, which is a little bit lighter than most travel day. And we will be planning to do episodes Tuesday nights moving forward for the rest of the season until you're sick of us. And you probably won't be, because we're going to keep giving out winners. And I figured, since we got a pretty short card on Thursday, might as well go through some of, I guess, what we've seen so far. Maybe your surprise teams in either direction.
So I'm high. I was high on the Pirates to begin, and now they're one of the only two last undefeated teams. You have the Pirates and the Tigers as the last two unbeatens. I don't know who had that on their bingo card or who has them in the World Series, but
I
that's
think
what
I gave
baseball
that
does to
out
you.
our first episode as my World
Yeah,
Series prediction. You might need to go listen to that again.
right. And then we have some winless teams like the New York Mets, who, spoiler alert, I'm going to bet against them twice tomorrow. So it's going to be, or today, Thursday games. I'm betting against them twice. No, but it's been a fun start to the season. I was high on the Pirates. I mean, obviously it's a hot start. They're currently actually losing to Washington, so we'll see how that turns out. But they have a good start, and their team is peaking. I like what the Pirates are doing. I like their pitching staff, and their young guys, Brian Hayes, holding down the keystone, the hot corner, and then they got the big guy, O'Neal Cruz. He can throw harder than anybody, run faster than everybody, and hit the ball harder than everybody. I mean, he can do all those three things. It's pretty exciting to watch.
Yeah, Brian Hayes at the Keystone, as you like to say. Keystone State, I think, is Pennsylvania as well.
Well, Keystone's second base, hot corner, third base.
Yeah, I've never heard second base called a Keystone, actually. I just thought you were going to go with the theme with Key Brian and keep everything with
Oh yeah, that
a
would be
name,
good though.
you
Yeah.
know? So I agree on those sort of things. I mean, watching the Astros get swept at home was also incredibly wild to me, and then end
Yes.
their losing streak to start the year, or winless streak, with a no-hitter. Ronel Blanco, to me, I think that's a perfect kind of illustration of how baseball seasons go. Literally, it's 162 events that are very, they seem related, but a lot of times they aren't. And I think we've seen, I mean, I wouldn't all of a sudden think that the Blue Jays are terrible because they got no hit in the first week, but I also think that does potentially point out some of the flaws in the Blue Jays. I think strategy and really what their squad is built to be, a bunch of young players, young studs that haven't really delivered on their stud type of expectations. And I feel like that's a team I'd like to bet against moving forward as much as I possibly can. Though I also was very interested in backing them in Tampa that first series. So hard to say, all that sort of stuff. I mean, so another thing that I want to talk about before we get into today's card was the Yankees visiting Arizona today. I didn't know that you had the Arizona under 8.5, but I had Arizona money line. after backing them also in yesterday. So it would be Tuesday's game, and then reporting this Wednesday for Thursday. We're talking about Wednesday's afternoon getaway day with one of the most, I think, overmatched umpires in the world. I don't know. Did you see some of the strikes he was calling? Specifically, he got Tucker Barnhart twice, the catcher for the D-backs, which is like the worst thing in the world because a catcher can't say anything because he wants to strike calls for his pitcher. So he does is like takes the timeout, basically takes a lap around the field. If he could, he would have. And I mean, Tucker Barnhart's like a he's on the interstate. He's hitting below 200 every year. So he needs all the help he can get. And this guy is literally 2-0, calling pitches as his eye as a strike. I think Brian Walsh, hopefully none of his family members listen to this podcast, but tell us about your play today. And I think we have some advice to give for the listeners.
Yeah, so baseball can make you feel so smart and so dumb at the same time. You're cruising to an under 8.5 at 2-2 going into the final inning, and then in the 10th, with you get the ghost runners. That's already scary enough. You get 2 runs in the top of the 10th, 2 runs in the bottom of the 10th, and then they score more and blow the 8.5. So the game obviously went over. I saw you put on Twitter the last strike of the game even was outside. So the umpire's trying to help my under by calling everything a strike, but alas, was not meant to be.
Yeah. Thank you for bringing that up. Yes. If you want to see me get mad at umpires, go follow at @the_real_G Warner on Twitter. I haven't figured out a way to put that on Instagram yet, but as soon as I do, don't worry, I'll put it there too. Yeah, and it was a pitcher up to bat because the Diamondbacks had an injury, had to make a bunch of substitutions, and basically ran out of pinch hitters. And so they literally sent Scott McGuff, who was horrible, out of the bullpen. But the biggest thing to me is Alex Verdugo also hitting 121 in the season, sitting first pitch dead red and just hits a home run when he literally been automatic out the entire series. So it's not great. I think my takeaway, and unfortunately with these Manfred men or whatever we're calling them, ghost runners, I just don't think you can even play full game unders anymore. I think if you like under, you should play under first half, first 5 innings. It's not exactly the same thing. Of course, you can lose the first half under and win the full game under. It happens from time to time. But in that type of situation, the worst thing for me in baseball is a lot of times you're betting under, you're probably betting a relatively low total. And because I think most people are not betting under 13 in Coors Field. So unfortunately, you're potentially dealing with the game can't end until you get 1 run, and then it just all gets gross from there. So that'd be my takeaway, and probably the way I'm going to play unders. I try to avoid them like the plague. They were a really big start for my baseball betting career. I used to track umpires. Andrew Brooks certainly knows that from fraternity days, literally in meeting, having a laptop out, and literally I can't tell you how much time I spent. Fortunately, we have some people that actually do this for me now, but it's not really the moneymaker it used to be. So that'll be our, I guess, takeaways or our flashback, and let's get into I guess this Thursday card. Well, all lines are quoted courtesy of BetOnline, Sportsbetting.ag. There are links in the podcast description and the various websites. If you're not a member at either of these places, any of these places, go. They're the same site. One gives a 50% bonus on your first time deposit. BetOnline does. Sportsbetting.ag will give you 100% up to $500, and they'll do it twice. So if you're not a member there, go take advantage of free money from a casino. I think it's the best way to do it. So we'll start, we'll go in rotation order. So we'll start in the National League. We got those Pittsburgh Pirates there on a getaway day here with an afternoon game in Washington, the nation's capital. We got Martin Perez at Josiah Gray, and it looks like Martin Perez and that maybe that start to the season for the Buccos, getting a little respect here, minus 127 favorites. Total is 9, juiced pretty heavily to under.
Yeah, that favoritism towards the Pirates is not enough, I don't think. I mean, minus 127. You got Martin Perez, who had this resurrection season in 2022 with a sub-3 ERA. Like, I don't think we all think that's real. But he pitched well in his first start. Josiah Gray did not. Josiah Gray's never really had it for me. I would take the Pirates at minus 127 with that price. I don't think they're being respected enough quite yet.
Yeah, maybe there's a little weather involved in this, though. To me, a 9 total feels pretty high for these two offenses. I think the biggest question about Josiah Gray is, can he keep the ball in the yard? Former Dodgers prospect, has really good swing and miss stuff, a lot of strikeouts. But I think the big question, like I just said, is what does he do when people actually make contact? I think the nice part, and I've heard this on millions of Nationals games. I haven't watched many in recent years, but Bob Carpenter, their play-by-play guy, who I feel like was kind of not involved all of last season. I don't really know why or if he's back or whatever, but he would always talk about how the cold weather was just the weather decided how that park worked. In the summer, ball flies. In the fall and in the spring, beginning of the season, you shouldn't expect it to. So I think my bigger interest, rather than backing Pittsburgh, who I like, I'm certainly concerned about Martin Perez because he's a pitch to contact guy in a world that doesn't really allow that anymore. But I'll go under 9 in that one as my best bet, I guess. We'll move next to Miami visiting St. Louis. Ryan Weathers at Lance Lynn. Looks like we have a total at 8.5, but the side we have St. Louis a minus 145 favorite, which is pretty sizable. But they started out with a West Coast swing at the Dodgers and at the Padres. Now they get to come home for a home opener. That's probably why they have the early start, and Miami needs a win.
Miami does need a win. They are winless. In this game, I couldn't decide who I wanted to fade more, Ryan Weathers or Lance Lynn. So by that
I think
logic,
I
I'm
know where
going
you're
over
going.
8.5.
Yeah,
I
I think
faded
you
Weathers
telegraphed
in
where
the
you're
opening
going.
day or the last time he started his first start, and that was successful. So I am going to ride that. I do not think he's a good pitcher. I do not think he can really get big league hitters out. And the Cardinals do have big league hitters. I mean, Wilson Contreras and Paul Goldschmidt and Nolan Arenado. Those guys have been around. They can take advantage of balls over the middle of the plate. I think they will. I think we'll go over.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing that Ryan Weathers got so much. I mean, he came up, I feel like he was pretty good and maybe an early round playoff exit for the Padres or maybe towards the end of the season. So he had a lot of hype. I think his dad was a pitcher too, and that probably all kind of plays into the same game, but has not really had it. That's why he's pitching for Miami and not in San Diego anymore. Lance Lynn, I mean, I don't really know what to expect from good old Lance. I'm amazed he's still out there throwing baseballs, probably 93 instead of 95, but he's got to pay for his barbecue habit in some way. I think my concern really is that St. Louis's lineup really I feel like they have big names, but I don't think those names produce very much. Goldie a couple years ago was incredible, but I don't know. I feel like he's certainly on the downward trajectory of his career. Nolan Arenado, I mean, it wasn't a good trade for the Rockies because they got nothing back and they also were paying him to leave. But feels like that was maybe better for them that they spent all that money they would have signed him with on Chris Bryant. So maybe it didn't go very well. I don't really know what to do with this one. I feel like I don't like St. Louis. I really don't like Miami. I don't trust either of these pitchers. So I guess I'll go over there with you. But geez, this is one of those where I think I will gladly waste or burn my money literally with a lighter instead of throwing it.
I will have picks and leans on all these, especially on a 6-game card like this. But follow me on Twitter at @ABrooksBets for the actual card of what I actually bet. You'll be able to see and track the stats. I am positive 4 units on the year, 27 and 23. Went 5-0 yesterday, so we are trending in the right direction. We're in Vegas, positive vibe only.
We're cooking with gas, and
gas.
we're intending a J-Lo party tonight in all white. So what could be better? Yeah. We'll move next to Cleveland at Minnesota, switching to the American League. We got Tyler Bybee, whatever something Bybee.
Think Tanner, yeah.
Tanner. It's always the
I would have gone Bibby. Is it Bybee? Bibby?
I'm certain it's Bybee.
Okay.
But I mean, who knows? Because a lot of players do change the pronunciation of their names. It'd be awkward after I just said that. I'm sure, but I am sure. We'll go to Minnesota with Pablo Lopez starting. Lopez a minus 152 favorite, pretty respectful for a Minnesota team that did get A. Brooks Bet, his first best bet winner of the season on our last episode. Keep us on your minds for Tuesday nights into Wednesday going forward. By the way, this is a little bit of an off night as we get started trying to establish when we're actually going to record. Total here is 7.5, juiced a little bit more to under than to over.
Yeah, it seems like they respect the pitchers in this game, which I also do. I did more research on this game for tomorrow than any other one. You know which team has the most positive run differential of all the whole year so far? It's the Cleveland Guardians at plus 28. I know they played the A's to start, but then they played the Mariners, and they're hot. I want to ride Pablo Lopez. I don't. I said I was going to do that until he was getting a number that I wasn't really comfortable with, and I think it's already today his second start. My best bet was the Twins, and I did win with Pablo Lopez on the hill on the opener on this podcast. But I'm going to go Guardians with the extra money to do it.
Ooh,
The
okay.
weather is really windy today, and I think it's going to be kind of windy for this game Thursday. So I see why that number's low. I think the wind blows when the wind blows from the north in Minnesota. It's actually just a left to right breeze at the park. But it
Wow.
is.
Almanac over here.
I went right into the weather. I went into everything trying to figure out this game, and I'm just going to take the extra money to bet on the Guardians. That's going to be my pick on this one.
Yeah.
Plus
So
130 or so.
at A Brooks bets in his 4 units so far this season in just about a week's time. He clearly is thinking this one's a coin flip. So why not take Tanner Bybee? I'll go under 7.5 in this one. I think I like the two pitchers. And with that said, it probably would be an under first five, but probably an under four first five, whatever. We'll go full game totals in this and just hope that we don't hit extra innings. But I do like the Cleveland side. I was pretty impressed by them a couple nights ago when Shane Bieber was on the mound. And honestly, it looked like to me that Luis Castillo was throwing really well and then had one misplay in the outfield, then a home run, and all of a sudden it was 4-0 Cleveland, and then Seattle, excuse me, wasn't able to really come back in that matchup. I'm concerned. I think Pablo Lopez. I think you're doing the right thing, fading Pablo Lopez. I don't think he's this good of a starter to be priced in this way. I don't really like Minnesota. They've got questions in their bullpen, and Rolls-Royce Lewis is back in the garage, unfortunately, for a while, because that seems to always happen. But I like Cleveland. I feel like they're always competitive. They never really get much respect from the odds makers or the market. So I agree with you there. We'll move to Chicago and the White Sox, or excuse me, we'll move to Kansas City. Chicago White Sox visiting Kansas City. You got Mike Soroka at Seth Lugo. Looks like we have Kansas City minus 160 favorite, even bigger than Pablo Lopez, but that's probably because they're playing the White Sox. Does feel like this is a little bit extreme for Kansas City. Total here is 8.5, juiced pretty heavily to under. So we might see this first pitch be around 8. Soroka's got some good pedigree, but also hasn't been healthy for 3 years now. So any interest in those White Sox, which might be Black Sox, depending on how the season goes?
Yeah, I saw that number. I saw that line exactly like you just described. That is too much for the Royals, a minus 160 something favorite. Lugo was also a prize prospect a few years maybe before Soroka and battled injuries for a while. This is like the battle of the pitchers who were supposed to be great and just got hurt. I know Soroka's actually is mostly lower leg. I think Achilles twice or
I think
something.
so. I think so.
So that's kind of unique as an injury for a pitcher. But I'm going to take the White Sox here. It's nothing to write home about. They're just giving you more money if the White Sox win. And as my old coach used to say, I know the math doesn't exactly add up, but the guy who taught me most about baseball, not necessarily betting, but the sport in general, said every team wins 50 games, every team loses 50 games, and it's the middle 50 that count. And I know that's only 150 and there's 162 in the game, but when they give you more money for a rather random sport to, on a day-to-day basis, that it's a game of trends, it's a game of all season. That's why there's 162 of these things. I'll take the extra money to bet on the White Sox here.
Interesting. I didn't. So at A Brooks Bets is telling us that they have 162 games in just to fill out the gambling requirements of everyday human beings in the United States of America. Interesting. I'll go under 8.5 here, which is odd, supporting two oft injured pitchers, but they're not hurt yet because they're starting tomorrow. So
That's right.
I'll go with that. Hope for some bad weather in Kansas City, and honestly, one of the under the radar hardest parks to hit a home run of any park in all of baseball. And that matters because that's usually the easiest way to score. Just ask the Diamondbacks and Yankees today with 3 home runs that before extra innings, and that only plated 4 runs. We'll move now to, I guess, some write-in games, as they're called, or some makeups. And we got Detroit visiting the New York Mets for 2 of them. We might have already had a hint from at A Brooks Bets about what he's going to do on these games, but we might as well discuss them anyway. Casey Mize trying like heck to make his season debut for an undefeated Detroit Tigers team. Adrian Hauser came over from Milwaukee, I believe, to the Mets, and he's probably trying not to make his season debut, and it's been working because the weather has really just completely washed out two straight Mets games, which they haven't won yet. So maybe that will distract their fans who said instead of cancel the game on one of the tweets recently, they said cancel the season. We got this first matchup. It's 11:10 Eastern time start, and I imagine the second game's gonna come right after with no real split or clearing the park or anything. They're just hoping to get anybody in there, probably in the on Long Island on the way to Queens, or in Queens, I guess. So it looks like Hauser minus 126 favorite. It's about the same as it's been since 3 days ago. By the time anyone's listened to this, total is 7, and it's juiced all the way over right now. Maybe we see a 7.5 or so before first pitch.
These are 7 inning games, correct? The double headers. Do they still do that? I'm gonna have to check that. So I stayed away from the total without confirming, but
I do not think that they are 7. I was actually thinking about that because that's probably intelligent. But I'm pretty sure that was like a COVID thing, and I think they've been only doing 9 games, 9 inning games. I mean, unless they do one of those, because they did have some scheduled they had some scheduled doubleheaders in some schedules recently. I feel like I remember. But I think there's still 9 innings. Let's plan for them to be 9 innings for now.
Well, regardless, I'm not betting the total. I'm betting the Tigers. The Tigers are I know this is like such a public opinion, but the Tigers are undefeated. The Mets have not won a game. The Mets fans are not happy. I mean, I kind of love this. You'll see the smile like ear to ear. I just love Mets fans being upset. I don't know if it's Frank the Tank or whatever, but like it's just hilarious to me. And the Tigers are an upstart team. I mean, you talk about the Pirates and their young prospects. You're going to get 2/3 of their future, which is Skubal, who's obviously already an ace, and you have Casey Mize on the hill and Matt Manning in the next game. I mean, those are very high draft picks, very high prospect pedigree pitchers. I think that they're putting something together there in Detroit. I know they have a pitcher's park to make those guys happy probably for a long time. This is on the road, obviously, in New York, but you're giving me money to take the Tigers, who I think are a better team, and I think they're in a better headspace, and I think the Mets might crumble, and I think it would be funny to watch. So I'm going to put a unit on each one of these things on the Tigers.
Yeah, and most likely we don't have a line yet for Matt Manning at undecided for the New York Mets, but I imagine it's probably a similar price, maybe even the Mets.
That was my assumption, yes.
Maybe even a little bit bigger of a favorite, despite a bullpen game, because I don't think Matt Manning's as well. I mean, Matt Manning to me, I mean, he's had some really good results in his Major League Baseball career, though I don't know how many are deserved or how that will look going forward. I feel like he's been a pitch to contact guy, which is kind of rare for a lot of young pitchers now. I feel like they're generally more of the strikeout people, and I don't know that Matt Manning has been in his career. I feel like he came up and was really hot. I think like last year he had a really good run as well. I don't know if those things are sustainable, but when I look at the Mets right now, I don't know if I would agree with you that they are a worse team than the Tigers. Certainly worse headspace. I will not disagree with you there. But just the amount of money that's been spent on the Mets, I think requires that they're a better team. We have Pete Alonso playing for a contract in a contract season. Lindor, who I feel like was a big signing that really hasn't done too much despite the money they're paying him. But with all that said, I did play the Tigers on Monday this week, the last time they actually played a game. 2 hits from the Tigers in 9 innings before they exploded for 5 runs in the top of the 10th inning. So I guess I'm 1-1 on extra innings so far this year. If I could finish the extra innings 50%, I will literally do a happy dance if you check in with me in the end of October. I do not expect to have that type of record, unfortunately, because I'm generally doing road underdogs, and that does not ever go well. But I would like to ask you, since we seem to have a little bit more time on such a short card, what do you think about the Tigers lineup? I mean, they are, to me, off to a great start, but they played the White Sox and then one game against the Mets. I guess the White Sox have won finally, but the Mets haven't, and the White Sox are clearly far under 500. There does seem to be some platooning with Kerry Carpenter, who's playing against righties only, and Matt Vierling is coming in against lefties, which isn't as drastic as like the platoons we saw from the San Francisco Giants, and a lot of times we'll see from the Minnesota Twins even this year. I feel like the Giants are doing less of it. But do you have belief? I mean, I'm a big Spencer Torkelson fan, but I gotta say it seems like he's a streaky hitter, and when he's really good, he's great, and when he's not really good, that he can be a fairly easy out and an important spot or slot in that lineup.
Yeah, I mean, you touched on what I think are the important parts of their lineup. That's Kerry Carpenter, who yes is platooning. He's very much better against right-handed pitching. Um, Riley Green, who is another left-handed bat
Yep.
and a young prospect who, hopefully is ready to take them somewhere because they need it. That's kind of what they're riding on. Their free agent acquisition of Javi Baez, I don't think didn't go very well, at least offensively. He has some chase numbers that are historic. They are. I think he swings and misses like 52% of his swings or something. It's Don't quote me on the exact stats, but they are historic and they have been trending that way in spring training this year too.
Well,
Javi
I
Baez can't
saw
be
it
hit.
Monday night. I saw him swinging a pitch that I think was in the
Yeah,
other batter's box. And even I generally listen to or watch the broadcast, whoever is the home team, or especially if they're the other team against who I'm doing. So I know that if they get excited that things are going badly for me. But they were like aghast, the Mets broadcast, about the fact that Javier Baez swung at this pitch that was so far away. And they're like, well, he does have to swing and miss still.
yeah, he's got some swing and miss in that game. He's like he almost is one of those guys where if he's out of the lineup, it'll change the opposing team's over K's number. Like the opposing, sorry, he's like one of the difference makers in the line because he's gonna strike out twice.
Hell
Um,
yeah. Hell yeah.
yeah, Torkelson and Green and Carpenter are their nucleus. I know they have that guy Kana who gets on base a lot. He's played in Oakland for a while. He's an on base guy, so hopefully
Yep.
he can help them. Um, I'm not super impressed with the Detroit lineup yet. I know they're building kind of slowly, absent that one free agent signing of Javi Baez, but um,
It
I like
might
the pitching
might
staff
cause
more than
them
the
it might
lineup.
cause
That's what
them
you're asking.
they might be building even slower with 161 million out laid out for Javier Baez,
Yeah,
hitting seventh in their lineup. Yeah, I feel like the Tigers, they seemingly have built via pitching, and I think that their lineup is going to probably hold them back. I mean, it might not hold them back so much in such a bad division. Though we already talked about the Guardians, how they're off to a good start and probably going to be very competitive. The Twins are usually make the playoffs and get bounced type of thing. But for the rest of that division, it doesn't feel like it's that hard to be in that race even, and I think that would be a win for the Tigers this season. I think the Royals seem to be far further away than the Tigers. The White Sox seem to be in a complete rebuild, so I think that all helps in that type of
yeah.
direction.
That's
Um,
the weakest division, correct? I mean, it's got to be
I mean, I think it's the two
top to bottom.
centrals. The two centrals are the worst, in my
Yeah,
humble opinion. I think the AL Central is the worst. I mean, to me, there's at least and maybe I'm a sucker for the big names, but the big names in the NL Central, I feel like at least have some name value in their rosters. And honestly, I feel like the Brewers are always a quality team. You know they're going to pitch. I mean, and that's something that I think like the smaller market teams, that's really what they can do. The good Marlins teams were always that way. You knew they could pitch, questionable on whether they could hit, and if they had some of those younger players before they traded them off somewhere else for peanuts in some cases, depending if Derek Jeter was running the Marlins or not. But I think from a Tigers perspective, I mean, I'm very interested. I guess I haven't given my pick yet. I literally have been backing Casey Mize both days that they had rainouts. So I'm like seeing the money leave my account and then like, oh wow, I must have won a huge bet. And then I'm like, oh, that was the bet I played out that I guess they just postponed the game. I'm like, wait, are they giving me free cash now? Thank you, Bet Online and Sportsbetting.ag. Please follow the links in the podcast description if you're not a member at either of those places already. But I think from a double, I mean, there is, I think, some value in playing back-to-back underdogs in a doubleheader where a lot of time it's rare to sweep double headers, and I think it's probably more rare to sweep it on the road, but I don't know that it matters too much. It does seem like 2022 we reverted to 9 inning double headers, so we should have full games here. Some questions about what that means for bullpens. Detroit's, I think they've got a good one. I really trust AJ Hinch. I know he's got some doubters out there for the sign stealing or the everything saga in Houston, but I feel like he can manage a bullpen. I think the Mets are really lined up to be very righty heavy, and that's like perfect for Jason Foley, who struggles with left-handed hitters. So to me, Casey Mize, there's still a lot that I don't really know about his game because he's such a young pitcher. But I do know that Adrian Hauser has some good outings in him, but he's a pitch to contact player, and that is not a good thing that you want to be as a Major League Baseball pitcher. We'll see about weather for these two games, and I'll have to probably think about if I really want to back Matt Manning. But I don't mind the idea of backing two Detroit Tigers and hoping as two underdogs just to get a split and end up a little bit with a little bit extra change in that account end of
Right.
day. So, any last thoughts on that matchup or on this card before we get to best bets?
No last thoughts on the Tigers. They're good. They're well, they're undefeated. I'm not sure that division's still a long way to go. We'll see.
All right, so at least going 161-1, you're saying. Okay, so we'll get into our
Yeah.
best bets for this Thursday, April 4th. Thank you, of course, for tuning in. If you're not a member of my Patreon, check it out, patreon.com/real_G Warner. Best spot to get all my plays, leans, write-ups, everything across college basketball, what's left in that season, plus soccer, which I know annoys one person on this podcast, but there's a lot of it, and it was a really good last weekend, I think, in soccer so far. So stay tuned over there. Of course, we've got podcasts coming out. I got my soccer pod coming out usually every weekend and one midweek. Got I think the last Final Four edition with at Big East Ben for the Need for Seeds college basketball podcast. And then, of course, stay tuned with us here on the baseball edition. We'll be doing Major League Baseball every Tuesday night at minimum. If you want us to do more than that, please slide on our DMs or maybe leave some 5-star reviews. I feel like some ratings have come in, but no comments. So unfortunately, if you don't leave a comment, I can't make at A Brooks Bets read them back to you. But make sure you jump in there if you want to see us more. That certainly is a good way to do it. So file in, throw us some 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify. That'll be huge. Subscribe to the YouTube channel at @the_real_G Warner. So without further ado, let's go with our best bet from at A Brooks Bets, the hottest one on this podcast, or I guess we're both hot because we both won 1-0 in our first episode.
That's right. That's right. My best bet is over 8.5 Marlins Cardinals.
Okay.
I've already told you about Ryan Weathers and how I don't believe him, and I think there are at least professional hitters on the Cardinals lineup. But what I haven't said yet is that the matchup data of the Marlins versus Lance Lynn is actually pretty substantial. Tim Anderson and Luis Arias both bat over 300. They bat 300 over 300 against a lot of people, I guess, but with OPS is over 900. You've got Abisail Garcia, Jazz Chisholm. They all hit Lance Lynn really well. So that's why I'm going to go over. I think they see the ball. I think pitcher hitter data, even at like 5 at bats or 10 at bats, you'd like to see a little bit more. But I think it's worth something because seeing the ball out of a guy's hand is like kind of an instant thing. Like you either do or you don't. And I think you can, obviously a pitcher is going to get a hitter out more than a hitter is going to get a base hit or a home run. But if you see guys hitting, over 300, over 400 with 5 at bats and 3 and 10 at bats or something, OPS is over 1,000. I think that there's good enough data to go, to have some success. They at least feel comfortable going into the game. They're studying film and they know what their approach is going to be. They don't really have to be the one that's changing. The pitcher's going to say, all right, how am I going to get this guy out? Because I haven't got him out really before at a good enough clip. So the matchup data favors the Marlins offense. I know they've been struggling to start the season, and I just don't trust Ryan Weathers. I'm going to probably fade him for a while until he proves otherwise. That's my over 8.5.
Yeah, and you know that you're still alive even if it's 2 in the 9th inning.
That's right. Full game over. Yes, not the first 5 over. I want to get good karma going the other way.
Yeah, don't sell those final 4 innings and the possible Manfred men by playing a first 5 over unless you really are scared of bullpens. But I mean, bullpens have gasoline cans in them strapped to their pitchers at times. So this is the real_G Warner. This is Betting the Pitch MLB edition, and this is our reel or our YouTube short. Thank you for subscribing at the real_G Warner on both those platforms. You just heard at A Brooks Bets. Actually, you didn't hear it on this reel, but you did if you listened to our full episode. They're coming out every Tuesday night going forward. We're 2-0 on our best bets from our first episode before opening day. But this episode Thursday, April 4th at A Brooks Bets just gave you the over 8.5 Miami at St. Louis in the, I think, home opener for the St. Louis Cardinals. For my best bet, I'm going to go with probably the biggest section of our podcast, and I'm going to go with those Detroit Tigers, undefeated to start the season. I like Casey Mize in the 11:10 Central Time start, right about noon Eastern Time for I guess, getaway potential doubleheader in Citi Field on Queens on the island. So grab the Tigers plus 116 and grab over 8.5 in St. Louis for our best bets for this episode 2 of Betting the Pitch MLB edition. And that'll do it for this episode. Thank you all for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe across all the platforms. Grab some free money from the casinos via the links. And I don't know, slide us some DMs or leave us some 5-star reviews with some tips, comments, quotes, questions, anything you want. And we will read them back, or I don't know, find a different way to do our episodes. That's all. That's it. Enjoy your white party at A Brooks Bets. Hopefully you stay as hot as your outfit. And we will see you all next week on the next edition of Betting the Pitch MLB edition.